Turkmenistan is a country with incredible potential, rich lands, and a poor population, led by the most eccentric president, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov. I already have a video about him on my channel, so if you haven't seen it, click on the link in the top right corner and then come back to watch this video. But let's go back to the beginning and go through the complete chronology of how Turkmenistan, a country with a population of 5.9 million people, turned into a harsh concentration camp and enslaved its own people. This is Hustler. Enjoy the show. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, 15 independent republics were formed, each pursuing its own independent policies. Some chose the path of democratic development, while others ended up with what we call dictators. Turkmenistan chose the path of authoritarian rule and soon started reaping the consequences. In 1991, when Turkmenistan became a separate country, it was time to choose the first president. Only one candidate was nominated for the position, Saparmurat Niyazov. Due to the lack of choice, he became the first president, with 98.5% of the population voting for him. Since then, the country has completely isolated itself from the outside world. All opposition, although weak, was eliminated, as it could still criticize the president to some extent. Saparmurat began consolidating all power under his control. He introduced new laws, including censorship that prohibited criticizing the government. In 1993, it became entirely forbidden to criticize the president, and anyone who did so would be imprisoned. In 1994, he extended his presidency for another 8 years, and in 1999, he declared himself the lifelong president, subsequently earning the title of Turkmenbashi, which translates to the father of all Turkmen, or the leader of the Turkmen nation. Since the 2000s, amendments have been made to the country's constitution, making it nearly impossible for ordinary citizens to leave the country. To obtain permission to travel abroad, one needs to go through numerous bureaucratic procedures and gather positive recommendations. However, in reality, it is almost impossible to navigate through these stages. Human rights activists report that citizens under the age of 40 are not allowed to leave the country at all. With each passing year of his rule, Turkmenbashi became increasingly deranged. Cities, a significant number of streets, factories, collective farms, libraries, schools, and other educational institutions were named in his honor. The highest mountain in Turkmenistan, Irababa Peak, standing at 3,138 meters, was renamed the Peak of the Great Turkmenbashi. More than 14,000 monuments dedicated to the Supreme and Great President were erected throughout Turkmenistan. Several golden monument statues were installed, with the largest statue being 14 meters tall and rotating with the sun. The cost of this sculpture amounted to $10 million for the country. Images of Niyazov were placed wherever possible, and the most amusing thing he came up with was putting his image on bottles of vodka and brandy, so that even when people were drunk, they would remember who their leader was. It even went as far as Turkmenbashi ordering a batch of toilet water with his image from France, which was supposed to be sold in local stores. As for tourism in the country, there are also many nuances. Not everyone can visit Turkmenistan. To travel there, one must go through at least 3 checks. A mandatory condition is that the tourist visiting the country should not be a journalist or in any way associated with journalism. Even if you obtain a visa and manage to visit the country, you won't be able to stay in any place of your choice, rent an apartment or a hotel according to your preferences. You will be given a selection of certain hotels that you must inform your travel agency about in advance. To move around the city, you also need to have an approved route and specific places you want to visit. You will be constantly monitored to ensure you don't capture anything unnecessary, and even if you manage to capture something forbidden, such as dilapidated houses, potholed asphalt, and much more, you will be required to delete it, and your re-entry into the country will be prohibited. The economy in a country with a population of almost 6 million people and possessing the world's 3rd largest natural gas reserves is relatively decent. It is comparable to many countries of the post-Soviet era. However, this means nothing for the people. The real wages in Turkmenistan range from $30 to $70 per month. In Turkmenistan, funds are allocated to ideological programs, luxurious infrastructure like the $2 billion Ashgabat airport, and the cult of personality surrounding the leaders. During the time of Turkmenbashi, the state spent significant amounts of money on social programs. Each family was entitled to 250 liters of free water per day, 35 kilowatt-hours of electricity, and 50 cubic meters of gas per month. Berdimuhamedov added his subsidy of 120 liters of gasoline per car, but it was canceled in 2014 as part of fuel rationalization efforts. The subsidy for gasoline was also canceled from January 2019 onwards. The high unemployment rate, especially in rural areas, led to residents of Turkmenistan not having enough money to even buy 6 kilograms of flour. It is noted that local and imported flour is sold in markets. 50 kilograms of first-grade Turkmen flour costs 220 manats, $1.63, while flour from Kazakhstan costs 300 manats, $1.85. It is worth reminding that the average salary of Turkmenistan citizens is not more than $1.70 per month. Additionally, the flour that reaches state-owned stores is irregular and insufficient in quantity. Residents have to make an effort to arrive at the store on time and wait in line. At bread-selling stores, there are gatherings of 200 or more people even before opening. Disorder and fights occur in the queues, and there are no police officers stationed at the stores in this region to maintain order. Even good neighbors become enemies when faced with queues for bread. However, instead of coming together and demanding that the authorities solve the problem of flour and bread shortages, people prefer to leave their homeland legally or illegally in search of a better life. A native resident of the country added that in just the past month, 8 families of his neighbors, friends, and relatives have left for other countries. To escape the country, its residents use their last money and borrow money from neighbors and acquaintances if they don't have enough. Some are helped by relatives who send money from abroad. With the arrival of the new president, who proclaimed himself Arkadog, there was hope among the residents for an improvement in the quality of life in the country. But it turned out to be the opposite. Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov turned out to be even more eccentric than his predecessor. The quality of life deteriorates every year, while the dictator becomes more cheerful and indulges in his songs. If you haven't seen videos of him, I strongly recommend doing so. You can find them using the hint above. This was Hustler. Subscribe to the channel, become sponsors on Patreon, and we'll see each other again.